The air in the small, quaint chapel was thick with the scent of lilies and the hushed anticipation of a new beginning. Sunlight, filtered through stained glass windows, painted streaks of crimson and gold across the polished wooden pews. It was a picture-perfect moment, the kind you see in movies and believe in with all your heart. Mark, standing at the altar in a sharply tailored tuxedo, was the epitome of a man in love. His eyes, a startling shade of blue, were fixed on the woman walking down the aisle. She was a vision in white, her auburn hair cascading over a delicate lace gown. Her name was Sarah. He had known her for 5 years, and every moment had been a crescendo of affection, understanding, and shared dreams. Their love story wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was a slow, steady burn, built on late-night conversations about their deepest fears and aspirations, on quiet Sunday mornings spent reading side by side, on shared laughter over silly inside jokes. They had met at a local bookstore, both reaching for the same worn copy of a classic novel. A cliché, perhaps, but it felt like destiny. Mark, a quiet and introspective architect, had found his soulmate in Sarah, a vibrant and compassionate nurse with a smile that could light up the darkest room. They were two halves of a whole, or so they believed. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was the chilling, heartbreaking secret lurking beneath the surface of their perfect life. A secret that would shatter their world, turning their beautiful love story into a Greek tragedy of unimaginable proportions. It wasn't a secret of infidelity or betrayal. No, it was far more insidious, a twist of fate so cruel and unthinkable that it defied logic. This story, the one you're about to hear, isn't just a tale of love found and lost. It's a journey into the dark heart of a family secret, a story so tragic you'll question everything you thought you knew about fate and family. Mark grew up as an only child in a small town in Ohio. His parents, loving but reserved, rarely spoke about their past. They were content with their quiet life, and Mark never felt the need to question it. He had a stable childhood, filled with football games, school dances, and the simple joys of small-town life. His world was small but secure. Sarah, on the other hand, had a more fractured beginning. She was raised in foster care, bouncing between different homes until she was a teenager. She never knew her birth parents. The uncertainty of her past left a void in her heart, a longing for a connection she couldn't name. She was a survivor, a testament to resilience, but beneath her bubbly exterior lay a deep-seated ache for a family of her own. When she met Mark, she felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. His family, with their quiet, unwavering support, became her own. Their wedding was a celebration of two lost souls finding each other. They said their vows, their voices thick with emotion, promising to love and cherish each other until death parted them. The reception was a joyous affair, filled with dancing, toasts, and the kind of unbridled happiness that only true love can bring. They were married, and for the next 6 months, they lived in a blissful bubble, building a home, planning their future, and dreaming of the children they would one day have. The first crack in their perfect facade appeared subtly, almost unnoticed. It started with a family gathering at Mark's parents' house for a holiday dinner. Sarah, ever the conversationalist, was flipping through an old photo album. She paused on a faded black and white picture of Mark's mother as a young woman. Next to her was a man with a gentle smile and kind eyes. "Who's this?" Sarah asked, her finger tracing the man's face. Mark's mother, usually so composed, hesitated. That's my brother Robert," she said, her voice strained. "He moved away a long time ago. We lost touch." Sarah accepted the explanation without question, but something about the moment felt off. The tension in the room was palpable, a silent hum of unspoken words. The conversation quickly shifted, and the moment was forgotten, or so it seemed. But a seed of curiosity had been planted in Sarah's mind. A few weeks later, while doing some research for a genealogy project as a fun hobby, she stumbled upon something that made her heart stop. It was an old newspaper clipping, an article from a local paper from decades ago. The headline was innocuous enough: "Local couple welcomes baby boy." But it was the names that sent a shiver down her spine. The parents were Mark's grandparents. The baby's name was Robert. But there was a second, smaller article a few months later, a brief announcement about an adoption. The baby was given up for adoption. A cold dread began to seep into her bones. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The timeline was off. Mark's mother had said her brother moved away, but the adoption article suggested a different story, and the name Robert, it echoed in her mind. It was her birth father's name, a name she had only seen on a few sparse documents from her foster care file. The coincidence felt too big to be a coincidence. But how could it be? It was impossible. She and Mark were so different, from different towns, different backgrounds. It was a long shot, a desperate, irrational thought. Yet, it gnawed at her, a relentless whisper in the back of her mind. This was the beginning of the end, the moment the beautiful tapestry of their lives began to unravel, thread by thread, revealing a truth so horrifying it would make them wish they had never met. The next chapter of their story, the one that would test the very limits of love and family, was about to begin. And what they would discover, what we will discover together, is a truth so devastating it would make the strongest of hearts crumble. Stay tuned, because the secret they were about to uncover was a family tragedy of epic proportions. The chill that had started in Sarah's bones began to spread, turning her once warm world into a landscape of frost and fear. The newspaper clippings were a physical manifestation of her growing dread, a puzzle piece that didn't fit, but that she couldn't ignore. She knew she had to talk to Mark, but the words felt like lead on her tongue. How do you tell the love of your life, the man you just married, that you suspect he might be something more, something unspeakable? The fear of being wrong was almost as great as the fear of being right. She spent days poring over old documents, searching online forums, and trying to piece together the fragments of her past. Every new discovery felt like a nail in the coffin of their happiness. She found more records confirming Robert's adoption. She found a birth certificate for a baby girl, born to the same mother as Robert, but given up for adoption under different circumstances. The dates, the locations, everything was aligning in a way that was too precise to be random. The birth mother's name on that document was the same as Mark's mother's maiden name. A cold, hard fact that slammed into her with the force of a freight train. She finally mustered the courage to confront Mark. It was a rainy Tuesday evening. They were sitting in their cozy living room, a fire crackling in the fireplace. The silence between them was heavy, weighted with the unspoken. Sarah held the documents in her trembling hands, the papers crinkling like dry leaves. "Mark," she started, her voice barely a whisper. I've been doing some research." He looked at her, his blue eyes filled with concern. "What is it, honey? You've been so quiet lately." She took a deep breath, the words tumbling out in a rush. She explained the newspaper clippings, the adoption records, the impossible coincidence of the name Robert. She laid out the timeline, the conflicting stories, the eerie parallels. Mark's face, initially a mask of concern, slowly morphed into one of disbelief, then horror. He dismissed it at first, calling it a silly coincidence, a misunderstanding. But as Sarah presented more and more evidence, his denials became weaker, his confidence crumbling. "My mother would have told me," he insisted, his voice cracking. "She wouldn't keep something like this from me." But even as he said the words, he knew they rang hollow. The tension, the quick change of subject, the strained voice. It all made sense now. The family secrets he never knew existed were now staring him in the face, a terrifying reflection of their shared past. The next few days were a blur of confusion and despair. They decided, with a heavy heart, to confront Mark's parents. The confrontation was a tearful, painful affair. Mark's mother, a woman who had always been a rock of composure, broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. The truth, once a carefully guarded secret, came pouring out in a torrent of guilt and regret. She confessed to having a child, a son named Robert, out of wedlock when she was very young. Scared and ashamed, her parents had forced her to give him up for adoption. Years later, she had a second child with the same man, but this time she was pressured to give the child to a family member who couldn't have children. But she couldn't, she insisted. The truth was, She had a second child with her husband, Robert's father, and the family she thought she was giving the baby to was a lie. The baby was given to an orphanage. Her voice, thick with sorrow, explained how she never told anyone, how the shame and guilt had haunted her entire life. Sarah and Mark stood there, their world collapsing around them. The facts, once scattered and confusing, now formed a clear and devastating picture. Robert, Mark's mother's biological son, was Sarah's birth father, and that made Mark and Sarah siblings. The word hung in the air, a cruel final blow. It was an unspeakable horror, a love story twisted into a nightmare, a bond of affection revealed to be a biological connection they could never escape. The love they shared, so pure and genuine, was now tainted, an act of unwitting incest that made their hearts ache with a pain so profound it felt physical. The discovery sent them into a tailspin. Their beautiful home, once a sanctuary of love, now felt like a prison. Every memory, every shared laugh, every intimate moment was now viewed through a lens of unbearable pain. The kisses, the hugs, the promises of a future together, they were all a lie, built on a foundation of heartbreaking ignorance. They couldn't look at each other without seeing the ghost of a shared past they never knew they had. A family connection that was a cruel joke played by fate. Their marriage, their love, their entire life together was built on a lie, a tragic mistake. They were no longer husband and wife. They were brother and sister. A truth so brutal it made them question their sanity, their very existence. This wasn't a romance. It was a tragedy, a story of two people who found each other only to discover they were never meant to be. The next chapter, a journey through the aftermath of this devastating revelation, will explore how they grappled with a truth that tore their lives apart. The silence in their home was no longer a comfortable quiet. It was a deafening void, filled with the ghosts of their past happiness. The vibrant, loving energy that once filled their space had been replaced by a heavy, suffocating grief. They moved through their days like strangers, two ships passing in the night, moored in the same port but unable to touch. The marriage, the vows, the shared life, it all felt like a fever dream they had woken up from, a beautiful lie that had been brutally exposed. Mark, the steady, grounded architect, was unraveling. He found himself staring at their wedding photos, at the image of Sarah in her white dress, and feeling a profound sense of disgust and betrayal. Not from her, but from the universe, from the cruel hand of fate that had dealt them this hand. The love he felt for her, so deeply ingrained in his being, was now at war with a biological revulsion he couldn't control. He saw her face, her eyes, her smile, and instead of seeing the woman he adored, he saw a reflection of his own family, a chilling mirror of his mother and himself. The intimacy they had shared, once a source of comfort and joy, now felt like a violation, a transgression against an unspoken, sacred law. He couldn't shake the image of his family tree, now a tangled, monstrous web of forbidden connections. Sarah, the resilient survivor, was crumbling under the weight of this new reality. The deep-seated ache for a family she had carried her entire life had been answered in the most tragic way imaginable. She had found her family, but in the form of the man she had married, the man she had loved with all her heart, the man who was her brother. The irony was a bitter pill she couldn't swallow. She had longed for a connection, for roots, and fate had given her a poisonous tree with a tangled, incestuous branch. Every moment of shared history, every whispered secret, every shared dream was now tainted. The love she had felt for Mark was not gone, but it was suffocated by a suffocating guilt and a profound sense of loss. She had lost her husband and gained a brother, all in the same devastating instant. The thought of a future without him was unbearable, but the thought of a future with him was unthinkable. The decision of what to do next was a silent, agonizing battle. Divorce seemed like the only logical, albeit heartbreaking, solution. But how do you divorce someone you still love? Someone who is a part of you in a way you never knew possible. The legal separation was a formality, a piece of paper. But the emotional and biological bond, the one that had been forged by a shared past and a tragic twist of fate, was unbreakable. They tried to live as friends, as a brother and sister, but the love that had once burned so brightly refused to be extinguished. The lines were too blurred, the history too entangled. Every shared glance, every accidental touch, was a painful reminder of what they had lost. They sought counseling, a desperate attempt to make sense of the madness. The therapists, sympathetic but helpless, could only offer guidance on how to navigate the grief, the shock, and the profound trauma. There was no easy answer, no magic solution. The only way forward was to untangle their lives, to sever the romantic bond and try to forge a new one based on their newfound reality. But it was a monumental task, like trying to untie a knot that had been tied for a lifetime. The pain of separation was a constant presence, a phantom limb that ached with the memory of what once was. The story of Mark and Sarah is a testament to the fact that some wounds are too deep to heal, some truths too painful to bear. Their love story, once a beacon of hope and happiness, had become a cautionary tale, a chilling reminder of the dark secrets that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly perfect lives. The family they had so desperately wanted to build was shattered, not by a lack of love, but by an abundance of it, a love that was tragically, horribly forbidden. The next and final part of this tragic saga will delve into the difficult choice they had to make, and the long road to healing they would have to walk, forever changed by a truth that tore their world apart. The months that followed were a testament to the sheer weight of their grief. Mark and Sarah, once a perfect pair, were now two shattered individuals, each grappling with a pain so unique and profound it was impossible to share. They separated, not out of animosity, but out of a desperate need for space to heal, to breathe, to simply exist without the constant, heart-wrenching reminder of their shared tragedy. Their home was sold, the memories of their short-lived marriage packed away in boxes, a poignant and painful farewell to a life they had once dreamed of. Mark moved to a new city, trying to start over, but the ghost of his past followed him like a shadow. He found solace in his work, in the cold, unyielding logic of architecture. He built structures, but his own life felt like a ruin. He avoided relationships, the thought of getting close to someone, of sharing his story, a daunting and impossible prospect. The fear of another cruel twist of fate, of a hidden truth waiting to be uncovered, was a constant companion. The love he had for Sarah was not gone, but it had been transformed into a quiet, aching sadness, a love he had to bury, a sister he could never truly have. Sarah, too, tried to rebuild her life. She went back to nursing, finding comfort in the routine and the act of caring for others. But her own wounds were too deep to ignore. She never stopped thinking about Mark, about the man who was her husband and her brother, the two roles forever at war within her heart. She often wondered if they could ever truly be a family, a brother and a sister in a world that saw them as a scandal. But the weight of their past, the knowledge of their shared history, was a burden too heavy to bear. They would forever be tied by a bond they couldn't escape, a love that had to be sacrificed for a truth they couldn't deny. Their story is a chilling reminder of the intricate, often cruel, tapestry of family and fate. It's a story that asks us to consider the secrets we keep and the consequences they can have, not just for ourselves, but for generations to come. It's a tragedy born of a mother's shame and a system that failed to protect the truth. It's a tale of two people who, in their search for love and belonging, stumbled upon a devastating secret that cost them everything. But even in this profound sadness, there is a lesson about the resilience of the human spirit, about the enduring power of love, even when it is tragically misplaced. Mark and Sarah's love was real, it was pure, and it was a testament to the fact that even in the most unthinkable of circumstances, two souls can find each other. The tragedy wasn't their love. The tragedy was the secret that made that love impossible. And so, their story ends not with a happily ever after, but with a quiet, somber acceptance of their fate. They are a cautionary tale, a whisper in the dark, a reminder that the world is a complex place, and some secrets are best left uncovered. But if there's one thing we can take away from their heartbreaking story, it's this: the truth, no matter how painful, will always find its way to the surface. It's up to us to decide how we respond when it does. Thank you for joining me on this incredible and at times unsettling journey. If this story has left you as captivated and moved as it has me, I'd be honored if you would consider hitting that like button. And to make sure you don't miss out on more stories like this, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. It's your support that allows me to keep sharing these powerful, true stories with you. Until next time, stay curious.